What exactly did the Mishnah say? I wasn't here when it was read.
The Mishnah is teaching us the following. Again, Schoik v'kolus roish. Rabbi Akiva teaches us this, that lightheadedness and merriment lead a person to sexual immorality. Okay, it could be within an addiction to certain forms of engagements with the licentious, or just being drawn to sexual immorality. Masoires, which we said is tradition, is a fence for Torah. Giving Maisa, which is a tenth of the person's earnings, 10% to charity, is a fence for wealth. And making oaths is a fence for precious, which is a separation from this world. And then it says Siag lechochma shtika, which is the fence for wisdom, is silence. Is silence. So what's the understanding here? Okay, so let's try and understand this. If anyone has a suggestion, please do so and suggest what's going on. All right, but we want to understand this in the following way. Let's start off with unpacking the first part of the Mishnah. Schoik v'kolus roish. What's so problematic about merriment? Yeah, the picture that one gets when they think about merriment is like this, just laughing, filling one's mouth with laughter. That's the state of merriment. Yeah, just like real, being drunk on laughter, on humor. The kolus roish and lightheadedness, a frivolity, almost not being anchored in this world. What do those things have to do with sexual licentiousness or sexual immorality? So I think to understand this Mishnah and to understand all the pieces in this Mishnah, we have to understand a very deep Kabbalistic concept. And we've spoken about this concept a number of times. But I think that once we just mention this concept, it'll be easier to understand the flow or how these dots all connect. And I think it's particularly relevant that we mention this concept and this teaching, especially in our context at the moment. We know that according to Kabbalah, a person, in order to experience a sense of joy, a sense of happiness, needs to feel a sense of expansion. And we know that there are two axes to feel a sense of expansion. The first axis we refer to is the horizontal plane. And the second axis of expansion is the vertical plane. Now, the horizontal plane in our circumstances has been substantially capped. A person can't leave their home. A person can't go for a run. They can't walk their dogs. They can go for a run in their homes, or maybe on their verandas, or on their balconies. I saw a person did like a 22K run or something on his balcony, which was pretty impressive. But essentially, the horizontal plane of travel, of business, of experience is capped. And now what the outcome of that is, a person can feel very depressed because how do I expand myself? What do I need to do in order to experience a sense of expansion and thus feel a sense of joy, a sense of happiness if I'm stuck? So one of those things when a person feels stuck is they tend to a state of lightheadedness. They tend to a state of schoik, a state of frivolity or merriment. And those things are inextricably linked to sexual licentiousness. Because where on the axes travel and experience and expansion may take place on the horizontal axes, what merriment and lightheadedness may do for a person is it gives them a false sense of expansion within the vertical axis. And we'll speak about what that vertical axis is once we get to the end there. Daryl, are you doing exercise there, buddy? What's going on there? It looks like you're doing a marathon in your home. You're getting me a bit dizzy there. We can't hear you though, you're on mute. Okay, but you know, we thank Daryl for giving us an experience of the horizontal expansion. Okay, so what happens, is a person needs to expand. So when a person's stuck in terms of their expansion in this world, they generally tend to a number of things. What I would put here, you know, in our modern context, here, schoik v'kolos roish, merriment and lightheadedness. We could easily find the gematria of Netflix within this, within these words here. And Netflix is really a symbol for the internet and for engaging with the feeds that take place on the internet, which we would refer to as kolos roish, a sense of frivolity. And what frivolity gives us is an experience or a false experience of expansion. That when I'm able to just scroll down on my phone endlessly, I feel, oh, wow, I feel somewhat that I'm expanding. And when I can watch a movie and sort of forget my experience in this world, I almost get myself high on some form of expansion through losing my tie to this world. I get into a state of imagination, or I get into a state of expansion through whatever I'm watching, whatever programs you sort of give you that high. So those things are very powerful in the sense that they give you that sense of expansion. Now, those things are essentially part of the same family as sexual licentiousness, because where sexuality comes into play, a person is able to very powerfully experience a sense of expansion through sexuality as well, through the imagination or through the revelation or revealing something that's hidden. A person can get a sense of being outside of themselves. You're not really, you almost can lose your attachment to this world, and you can enter into a state where I'm sort of drunk on experience or taking myself out from this world. And that's why those two things are very powerful, but also very, very dangerous, experiences of expansion. And we have to be overly cautious when it comes to being stuck within the horizontal framework, not to get usurped, not to be susceptible to the black hole of these false experiences of expansion. Now, it's not to say that within a proper experience of these things, so again, we have to understand happiness is vital. A sense of lightness is also vital. These things here that we're talking about here are going beyond and above. It goes to an unhealthy sense of attachment to these forms of expansion to give a person a feeling of expanding. Okay? Any questions up until now? Yes, Philip. No, you're good. You're good. Okay. Anyone else have a question here? Is this making sense so far? Philip, you're the only one nodding. Errol, Jack, anyone else okay here?
Can I also say something?
Yes.
So what I'm also thinking is with regard to the frivolity and licentiousness, when one gets to that point, or when one, some people are in the, they like putting others down. And I think the moment you start doing that, you start disrespecting people, and that goes same to licentiousness, and it's all about you and yourself. So it's sort of like being very narcissistic in a way. and then not really respecting others and just doing what you want. I think that's what this is also saying. And that could lead then to immorality, because you just don't care about the other people. It's
right.
your
You
needs
almost
that need
use
to be
people
satisfied.
to have that experience of expanding yourself, so you can make fun of someone
Yeah.
else. You can use people as a form of expansion through sexual licentiousness, which we understand is vitally problematic. Yeah. Thank you for that, Yehuda.
Mm.
Okay, so now the commissioners, now with that introduction, not that it's much of an introduction, we've actually gone into it, but I think it's opened up this Mishnah for us. The Mishnah now is going to go into a number of other forms of expansion, or false expansion, that a person may start to rely on in their lives. And we're going to try and understand how to deal with these in a healthy way. Okay, so the next the next step in the Mishnah is a vital step, in the sense that, well, let's see if you can give us any understanding here. What does it mean that tradition is offense to the Torah? Anyone want to give that a bit of a go?
If I may speak, morning everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you've said till now, the theory of expansion, which is interesting that we actually need Kabbalah to unlock this Mishnah for us. So that's interesting. Now regarding going with pretty much the direction that you heading in the way I'm seeing it.
Is anyone else losing Errol here?
Yes.
Yeah, Errol, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, Errol. Let's see if your internet gets back on speed, and then we'll reawaken your ability to talk. I've just muted you, but it's. Should we try again? I can see you nodding now, so I can. It actually looks like it's working. Let's give it one more shot, and then we'll see if it works. Yeah, Errol, you want to try that? No, I think it's not working.
It's frozen.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a suggestion here? Okay, let's try the following understanding. Thank you for that, Alan. Okay, so what we have to understand is one of the most important elements, firstly, of healthy expansion is Torah. Okay, so where we are now engaging the study of Torah, what you will feel after that engagement is less of a perpetual need or an unhealthy need to expand in this world. So once we've created some form of satiation within the study of Torah, then a person will actually experience less of a need to expand in the world. So it says the way of the Torah is that you sleep on the floor and you eat bread and water. Why? Why is that the way of the Torah? I've never seen, big rabbis doing such things. I've seen, you have to enjoy this world. The Rambam says you have to, sometimes see nice buildings. You have to experience this world and enjoy it. What does it mean that the way of the Torah is pas v'melach, bread with salt, water, and sleeping on the floor? So essentially what it means is that when a person is expanding within the vertical axes, which is the expansion of Torah and the expansion of spirituality and wisdom, the horizontal platform now is not of such a deep need to give you that experience of expansion. Now, one of the dangers with that, is that if a person doesn't create proper boundaries for their Torah, because Torah very easily, because it's on a vertical axis, and the spiritual generally can very easily be negated and be neglected. And the reason for that is our general engagement. I'm going to repeat that for you there, Philip. Our general engagement with the horizontal is very gravitational. It's interesting, you know, the gravity pulls you down. So it's very hard to actually start to expand vertically. Now, just to repeat what I mentioned here, the way of the Torah is not essentially that you need to eat bread and water. The way of the Torah is saying once you've tapped into that vertical experience of expansion through the study of Torah, through the spiritual, through the expansion, through the vertical, then essentially what happens is you don't feel as much of a need to expand in the horizontal. Thus, essentially what it's saying is once you have Torah, you don't have that perpetual need to eat more, to experience this world in a physical way as much. And thus it's substantial and it's sufficient for a person to just have bread, water, and sleep on the floor. They don't need more than that. It's not saying that's what you have to do. It's just saying you'll be satisfied with that experience of this world in the horizontal because you have so much vertical expansion. Okay, that's what we've brought down into the picture here with Torah. So now the element here is that we're understanding tradition. Tradition is a vital part of creating a fence for the expansion within the vertical. What tradition means is very often we can come along and say, listen, this is just tradition. It's not important, okay? It's funny that in today's context, that's what we value as the most important. You know, we say we just do Jewish things because it's a traditional thing, you know? So it's dangerous to just hold on to tradition. Tradition is just an external guide or guard for the Torah. But what tradition means is that, you know, even though the Torah and the engagement with Torah is much more essential, there's much more of a deeper experience, there are traditions that surround it, that guide it in a certain direction, that we don't lose that expansion in the vertical platform. And that's what we're understanding here, not to undermine tradition. Even though tradition isn't essentially the halacha, isn't essentially what we need to be doing in Torah, it's saying be very cautious to create for yourself certain boundaries within the expansion of the vertical, which we refer to as tradition. Keep yourself in the tradition, keep the tradition surrounding you, that you don't veer off, because it's very easy to start veering off if you don't keep to those traditions. Okay, any points here that anyone wants to make before we go to the next one?
Yes, I was thinking on a psychological level, part of having traditions is also a sense of belonging, because if so-and-so has a certain tradition and I look up to that person, it gives me a sense of belonging to do what that person is doing or to do what that group is doing. So in a sense, I think that's quite an important aspect, is that sense of belonging. Not to say that I need that to survive, but it just gives me a sense of being a part of something bigger than myself.
Yes, and that's an experience. That experience of belonging is a sense of expansion itself. You know, for us to sit here together now and learn and see a number of individuals all engaging in something bigger than ourselves is a form of tradition. There's an element of tradition there, that we're doing these traditions that connect us on all different levels and give us experience of expansion. So that's a very powerful point. Thank you, Yehuda. Now, Maasros siag le'osher. Okay, giving Maisa, which means a 10% to charity, is a boundary for wealth. Okay, so now what we're understanding here is the next experience of expansion that a person looks to is making money. And they feel that if I'm able to continue to make money, grow it constantly, then I feel like I'm expanding. That's why a person with billions doesn't find it sufficient. There's a constant need for more. Why? I mean, you could support the future generations in your family endlessly, you know, with that amount. Why do you need more? Why can't you stop and just enjoy it? So the experience for expansion is so significant that wealth is one of the traps. So when we spoke about sexual licentiousness and a state of disassociating from this world through lightheadedness and frivolity and merriment, we see that wealth is another experience of that form of expansion that a person can actually use it as a vice. So now one of the guarding points for that, and essentially if we say what is the biggest form of oisher, of wealth, what does the Mishnah say? Does anyone remember? Who is wealthy? Jacques, I see you saying something there, but you muted.
When you're happy with your own lot.
Excellent, Jacques. Very good. So who is wealthy? Someone who is sameach bechelko, who is happy with their own lot. Now, there's a number of ways of explaining what that means. One of the ways of explaining that is you sufficiently happy with what you have. But if you think about it, how do you become sufficiently happy with what you have? If we are constantly and perpetually needing to expand, it's really impossible to be happy with what we have because we always need to be expanding. Yeah. So there's another interpretation of what your lot is. How do you be happy with your lot? So if a person understands that they have two axes of expansion, and they understand that their lot, which is actually in their hands, is the silent, still self, which is always able to expand vertically, the spiritual self, which is always able to connect, then essentially when a person taps into that deeper wealth that's inside of them, wow, now I can appreciate all of the externalities that I have around me because I don't need as much to expand. And that's what it's saying here. Why does giving 10% of a person's earnings or property to the poor assist a person with experiencing their lot? Well, essentially, taking money, which is really the opposite of the horizontal expansion, by giving it away, you are almost saying, I don't experience my expansion within the horizontal. By giving away my money, which is the opposite of expanding horizontally, it's now pulling me into the vertical expansion. Now I'm able to experience my lot in a deeper way. And that's one of the most important things against being pulled into the black hole of money and wealth, that it's endless and it's perpetual and never ceases to satisfy. It constantly needs more. The Mishnah says, or the Gemara says, if you have 100, you want 200, and it's endless. So the way to curb that, to actually experience the wealth in a person, is to be involved with giving of that wealth. Nedorim siyag leprecious. Making oaths, okay? Making oaths, and we have to understand what making an oath is. Making an oath means there are certain things which are permissible. Yeah, you know, if a person comes along and says, I swear that I will keep Shabbos. No, that's not an oath. A person essentially has to keep Shabbos. You know, you can't swear to keep Shabbos. A person's already bound to keep Shabbos. But when it comes to certain things that are extra, let's say a person says, I make an oath. You know, I'm not making this oath because it will be very difficult for me. But I'm making an oath that I'm not going to eat chocolate. Okay, or I make an oath that I'm only going to sleep a certain amount. Well, I'm allowed to eat chocolate. The Torah doesn't say anything problematic about eating chocolate, and you know, the Torah doesn't come along and say there are any limits to how much chocolate I can eat. I could be essentially eating chocolate the whole day. I guess if I fall into the parameters of it being damaging, then it probably is going to be problematic. But let's say I want to indulge. Torah doesn't say don't indulge, doesn't say that anyway. But we understand that indulgement or indulging in this world is another experience of expansion. And thus when a person is going to enter into the physical world as a platform of expansion, then we're going to see a negative state here. We're going to see an unhealthy state of expansion. That's why it says actually making oaths, finding something within the physical that will be able to create some form of a capping system that will prevent an individual from really losing themselves, is a vital component in really allowing a person to enter into the silent expansion, which we're going to go into now. So that gives light onto a number of other frameworks within Judaism, such as Shabbos, for example. Shabbos, it says, is a nachla bli meitzarim. It says it's an inheritance without boundaries. But if you think about what Shabbos is, it's essentially all boundaries. But what we understand from this concept is the boundaries are just within the horizontal axes of expansion. Once we put those boundaries up, which is essentially what Shabbos is all about, not to experience the 39 experiences or expressions of expansion within the horizontal. That's what all the 39 attributes or 39 prohibitions are all about on Shabbos. Now we give ourselves an opportunity to expand within the vertical in a more successful way. We don't deplete the fuel or the energy to be able to then expand within the vertical. Okay, if a person is expanding constantly in the horizontal, they're making endless amounts of money, they're having endless amount of experiences, then they have less of a desire and less of an awareness of how much they need to actually expand vertically. And this is what the surprising experience is for all of us and humanity in the current circumstances, is that you will see a reawakening to the necessity that we deeply and existentially feel towards spirituality, because we don't have the distractions of the horizontal expansion that are there generally to give us that experience or that false experience. So this brings us to the final point, and that is siyag lechochma shtika, which means the boundary for wisdom is silence. Okay, the boundary for wisdom is silence. What on earth does that mean? Now you'll notice that it's written not following the pattern of Moisoiris Siag LeTorah, Master Siag LeOisha, Nedarim Siag LePrishus. It doesn't say that tradition is a fence for Torah and giving charity is a fence for wealth and making oaths a fence for separation from this world and abstinence. But it says the fence for wisdom is silence. Very interesting way of positioning the teaching here. Separate almost to the previous ones. So we have to understand what Chochmah is according to Kabbalah, is wisdom. Now, wisdom on a very superficial level is a very, very successful experience of expansion. When a person expands their wisdom, they feel a vertical expansion. Now, what's that got to do with silence? What's shtika got to do with expanding the wisdom? So just parenthetically, a lot of people like to talking. They like to chat. And that gives the person also an experience of expansion. It's almost like that lightheadedness that a person can feel. But too much chatter, too much talking is actually dangerous for a person's wisdom. Now, what wisdom is, according to Kabbalah, is the concept, and you'll find this in the actual lettering of the word. It has the words within it of koyach ma. Chochma, if you take the chaf and the ches and you flip them around, it spells koyach ma, which means the strength of what? And essentially what chochma is on the deepest level is a state of expansion that a person experiences in the spiritual platforms. It's bereft from physical experience, it's bereft of conceptual identity, it's bereft of any horizontal forms of expansion. What the world is very much tending towards, called the meditation or the mindfulness practice, is an experience of chokhmah, where a person is able to enter into a state of silence and enter into a state of non-thought. And they almost are able to then elevate themselves into a vertical platform of expansion, into the spiritual, into the nothingness, so to speak, where there's There's everything, but nothing. Nothing of this world, but everything of the upper world. And it's almost the person needs to negate their experience of this world to see it almost as if it's inconsequential, that it doesn't exist really on a tangible level. The only thing that exists is a silence that allows a person to expand vertically. And the teachings of Rabbi Nachman says that the key here, or this concept of chokhmah, is the key to unlock a person's keter, which means their crown. And the crown essentially is the connection point to what we refer to as the Ein Sof. And the Ein Sof is the ever-expansivity. Ein Sof is another reference to God. It's one of the best definitions a person can give to God, or to what God is, because essentially what Ein Sof means is without boundary. Ein means without, Sof, end. That's what Ein Sof means. So if we think about what is the best and most potent experience of expansion, it's godliness, or the nothingness of this world, to the everything of this world, which is God. The essential being that exists is the only real potent experience of expansion. So now what he's saying here is that once a person has gone through all of these aspects, meaning they've now put boundaries up for their wealth, they've put boundaries up to study Torah, they've put boundaries up not to engage with too much frivolity or merriment, they've put certain boundaries in terms of their involvement with this world and the physicality of this world, now they can enter into a state called chokhmah. But chokhmah needs shtika. Shtika is silence, where a person needs to put up boundaries to the silence, to create silence in the mind, silence in the brain, not a constant overactivity of thought and association with concepts, but a quietening of the mind, which we read about the Hasidim Rishonim, which would, the righteous men would originally meditate for an hour before prayer, and then they would pray for an hour, and then they would come down or have to reacclimatize or reconnect to this world for another hour, which means we have to experience or have moments of experience of silence of the mind, quiet meditation, quietness where a person almost experiences the deeper self through this world and what's happening in this world. Okay? And this is, I think, the understanding of what this Mishnah is teaching us. Does anyone have any questions about what we've just taught? Does this make sense? Let's see here. Farrell, do you have any comments here you want to make?
No, it makes complete sense. I'm on the page.
Excellent. Yitzhak, you want to say something? You're good. Yehuda, you want to add something there? I think he just switched off his mic. Thank you. Thank you for that, Yehuda.
There we go.
Oh no, you switched off your camera as well.
Oh, have I? Oh, your video stopped. Oh my word, what's going on this morning?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as you can hear me. I was
Yeah.
just wondering about the vows. There was something that you were saying there about the taking of the oaths. But I can't remember what it was. Sorry, I'll have to get back to my memory files. I think that one disappeared.
So again, with the vows, I think we spoke about that, and that is, not overindulging. There's something called the Tainus Arrivat, which is the fasting of the Rivat. Now, the Rivat fast would be the following. You would have, imagine your nice ice cream cone, and, some of the best part of the cone is right at the end, right there, just that completion of, done, I've finished the ice cream, that's the best part. Tainus Arrivat would be, you would eat the ice cream till the end, but you would leave a bit behind. That hurts, You would have your steak, oh, your delicious steak, and then you would leave a little bit behind that nice, crusty, beautiful, you know, almost a little bit rare piece of meat there that you just want to conclude and finish off with. The Tainus Arriva would leave it behind, you know, that last part of something. And that's just to show that that's a form of a vow of abstinence from this world, saying, you're not in control of my expansion. I'm in control of you. I'm putting a boundary for my experience of this world. That's a hard thing to do. But you'll see the dividends. The dividends are endless, which means once you are able to create some form of a boundary with in this world, obviously we're already in the platforms of I'm eating kosher, I'm keeping Shabbos, I'm doing whatever I have to do from the mitzvahs, but I'm adding that little bit more. Now you've got a very healthy infrastructure to then go skyrocketing within the vertical. But people say, listen, I'm not spiritual. I'm not interested in spirituality. You know why? Because there's too